listening to Opening the Harp Chakra, the podcast, bringing you beautiful, healing, magical harp music and talking with the artists that create it. I'm your host, Jay Michaels. Our guest today, a certified harp therapist, a cantor and organist at Trinity Lutheran Church in Fort Worth, Texas. His latest album is called Deep Peace, perfect for meditation and relaxation. And we will be listening to some of the tracks from that CD during the podcast today. It's my pleasure to introduce and welcome Laurence Furr. Hi, Laurence. Thanks for being on the podcast.
Hello. Yes, I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for asking me to participate.
My pleasure. Why don't we start right at the start? How did you first come to play the harp?
The thing that happened was I sort of regretted later in life having not chosen music therapy. So I returned to Texas from San Diego and was talking to a psychologist who had been in my choir at the church. And I was just sort of telling him about this and that, what would it have been like if I had gone into music therapy? And he said, well, I know there's some certification programs out there. So I immediately jumped on that and saw that the primary instrument in therapeutic music was the harp. So I did a Google search and did a lot of research and reading and chose a harp and got very lucky that I chose a company that was really good, and it arrived. I took lessons, and that's the way it started.
Well, you've come a long ways, producing some really nice music. I love the Deep Peace album. Let's play a track from it. I'm wondering if you could tell us about the piece "Gold of the Sun."
All of my music that is on there came to me while I was playing in the hospital, and sometimes it was inspired by a patient or a fragrance or something connected with my work. This one I dedicated to a friend named Libby, who is also in harp therapy. And it just reminded me of her. And so I started playing and I recorded a little bit of it as I was sitting in the hospital playing. And the more I played it, the more I thought of Libby. And so that's the way this piece came to me. And she lives in near Baton Rouge out in the country. She has sent me photos of the setting sun. And so the gold of the sun.
Soul to the Sun from the album Deep Peace, Laurence Furr. You have that cool little bendy string thing happening here. That's nice. You use the levers to get that effect?
I do.
Yeah.
I don't do that a lot, but in that case, I did because, as I mentioned, Libby lives in near Baton Rouge, and she has that very sort of Cajun accent, and it just sort of made me think of sort of blues, jazz, I don't know what, and I was inspired to sort of bend those notes and thinking
Yeah.
of cypress trees in the water and that kind of
Sure.
thing.
Yeah, why not? I like it. So you were a certified harp therapist. What is a typical workday like, if there is a typical workday for you?
Um, I go in to the hospital. I play in every department. I don't think there's
Mhm.
a department now that I have not played in. So a typical day, let's say, is I would get there early in the morning and go into surgery and play in the halls where the operating rooms open into. I have played in the operating room a few times, but more often I'm in the halls where all those doors open to. So there's people coming out from surgery to grab another instrument and going back in. And so a lot of times on Thursdays, for example, I start there in surgery. And then I will just play there as long as I sort of feel like it's benefiting. Sometimes it's an hour, sometimes it might be 2 or 3 hours, and then I will get up and go to another place in the hospital. Fridays typically, I start out in NICU, the neonatal unit, which is one of my favorite places to play, and I usually start with those two departments, and then I go from there to emergency or ICU or the critical care units. It's the county hospital, so the prison hospital unit is there. So I've played in there a few times. A psychiatric ward. I just go wherever I feel no one is directing me where I need to be, and it's really odd because sometimes I've shown up just sort of moved by a presence, and there it is that they really needed me, and they were so happy, even though they hadn't called me. I sort of showed up, and that's happened more often than you would think, and so it's really sort of serendipitous when that happens.
As far as your choice of music, is it the same kind of thing? You just go with what seems right at the time?
Yes, yes. And in the certification programs that I have have gotten my certification from, we're taught sort of what to watch for, what to look for, reactions from the patient, of obviously, reactions from the monitors if they're hooked up. Um, yeah, there's all sorts of cues to look for, and of course, I never take a score. That would just be too much to haul around this big hospital. So everything
Sure.
is improvised.
Now, do you play traditional music, original music, any popular stuff, or combination of all of the above? Or
I would say that 90% of the music I play is my own improvisation as
Mhm.
I'm watching the patient or gauging the room. But I do have um, traditional melodies that I use quite often also. Um, I don't get that many requests because I think people, when they walk in, they sort of sense that this is not a harpist playing for entertainment. But sometimes I'll get a request, and usually it's for a hymn, but sometimes it will be for a pop song or something. And um, usually, a lot of times when I get those, sometimes they're joking and they will say the typical "Stairway to Heaven" or can you play Pink Floyd on that thing? But sometimes they'll
the
ask for
Freebird?
yeah, they will ask for a piece, and I will even if I don't know it, if they can just sing a little bit of it and I can play a little bit of it, as long as they sort of hear it, they seem satisfied. But that doesn't happen very often.
Well, I'd like to feature another selection from your CD, Deep Peace. These were all composed by you, correct? Everything on the CD?
Yes, they all started out as improvisations, and then I played them so often they sort of became a composition.
So could you share the story behind Green of the Grass?
Green of the Grass, I love walking in the grass. I love being outside, and it makes me happy. And it was the name of the album, Deep Peace, comes from a Celtic prayer, which later became a Christian prayer. They changed a little bit of it and drastically shortened it. But the prayer says, deep peace of the flowing air to you, deep peace of the gold of the sun to you, deep peace of, then the prayer goes on, and one of them is green grass, and it just caught my attention. And because I love the grass and it makes me happy, and this composition or improvisation makes me happy.
We just heard Green of the Grass from Laurence Furr, our guest today on the podcast. Laurence, you have a Doctor of Philosophy degree. Your area of studies was humanities and music history. I wonder if we can talk a little bit about the healing power of music historically. What do you think? I know it's a broad subject. You have 30 seconds. Go.
Okay. Well,
I'm just kidding.
The degree itself, the PhD, is very focused in late 18th century Madrid. I was in Madrid on a Fulbright studying harpsichord, 18th century harpsichord, and I needed a topic for my PhD. I received the Fulbright in the middle of my PhD, so it didn't really apply to the PhD program itself, but one doesn't turn down a Fulbright. So I went to Spain, studied with the harpsichord. I went there on a harpsichord scholarship, and my professor there most music, people might throw darts at me that play harpsichord, but most harpsichord music, it really centers around the 18th century. And so that was her forte. And so she suggested a topic to me for my PhD, dissertation, which was the tonadillas of late 18th century Madrid. So I really studied how the music in late 18th century, how it affected royalty, how it affected the aristocracy, how it affected the common folk, and how it affected the politics. And my dissertation also dealt equally with this small genre of music called tonadillas, which were theater musical pieces, short pieces. But Goya's early paintings were right in the same subjects as these little these little music pieces were. So, of course, he was working for the court. So, so even though I was studying the effects of music on culture, it wasn't necessarily the healing properties. It was more political and social what was going on. And it was in this very compact couple or 3 decades there at the end of the 18th century in Madrid. So it was a very specific but within the entire PhD through the work in humanities, I took classes in rhetoric and theory of discourse and semiotics. So that helped me, of course, understand how signs and symbols and music and all the art can affect culture. And of course, as I got into therapeutic music, it all just sort of seemed to fit. Of how music can be a real influence in the way people feel and can create. It can create a healing atmosphere, or it can create, other types of atmospheres that may not be favorable. But of course, I use it obviously in a healing manner.
I found your composition Quiet Earth especially peaceful. I wonder if you could introduce it and we'll play it next.
It really is one of my favorites, not just because I like it, but I agree with you. It's a very peaceful piece. The music just seemed to fit with that line of the prayer. When I read the prayer, it was inspired as I was playing in the hospital. The lead she wasn't the lead chaplain at the time, but the chaplain that I worked with the most. It's a large hospital, so there were about 10 chaplains. And she and I worked well together. We did some mindfulness meditations for staff several times and for cancer patients. And she came and told me that she was leaving. She had accepted another call, so another position out of state. So I was very upset and emotional about this. And I went out and I just started thinking of her, and this piece came to me very quickly. And happily, through a sad situation, the lead chaplain at the hospital died, and Leanne came back, and now she is the head chaplain at the hospital. But she was gone for about 2 years. But so the piece started with her telling me she was leaving. But when I read the prayer, it just seemed to fit, because she has such a peaceful and loving aura about her. And I think this Quiet Earth has that same aura.
Quiet Earth from the CD Deep Peace, today's guest, Laurence Furr. So, Laurence, you have a new album coming out in the fall. Can you tell us a little bit about it, a little preview?
I do. I'm very excited. It's a continuation of the first album, but it is called "Upon the Corner of the Moon," and that is a phrase from Macbeth. The witch Hecate, I believe, is her name, says, and of course she uses the drops that she gets from this from the corner of the moon. She charms these drops, these vaporous drops, in a negative way. But I thought, well, upon the corner of the moon, if there were such drops, they could also be charmed, or they could be filled with love and good intentions. And my zodiac sign is Cancer, and the moon really does. It is a special presence for me. And so the title came to me, and I really, I don't know, it just sort of was there. And so the pieces, again, they're, the last one, Deep Peace, does have a couple of tracks on there that I use traditional melodies, but then of course I go off and do my own thing. But this new album, every piece on there, there's 13 tracks. Every one, I didn't use any traditional melodies on this. They're all improvisations, and so it's coming out October 6th. And yes, I'm very excited about it.
So, how many harps do you have?
I have 3 harps, which I have learned is a pretty small number for most harpists. But
That's true. Yes.
yeah.
What kind are they?
So the first one I got that I mentioned, I believe I mentioned it earlier, was a Dusty Strings, which is the company in Seattle, and they are the nicest people to work with, and they spent hours with me on the phone when I was thinking about buying it. And it is the harp that I record on. It's got such a beautiful, mellow, round song to it, a presence about it. It's just a really lovely harp. It's cherry wood. It's beautiful to look at. It's beautiful to listen to. And so that was my first harp, and I still love it, would never give it up. I got a small therapy harp. I was, as I mentioned, I go all over the hospital. There's 4 different buildings on this main campus. Plus, I go to the cancer unit, which is a few blocks away. The 4 buildings are connected by tunnels, by skywalks. So I'm in and out elevators, up and down all the time. And so I thought, I'm going to try a therapy harp, a small harp. And that way, as I'm walking from place to place. I can play it as I'm walking along because it straps on my shoulder, but then it also, I can sit down and hold it in my lap. It has 27 strings. And I had not heard a small harp that I really liked a whole lot. But I found this one and fell in love with it. And to my ears, it's just the best small harp out there. And it's made by a man named Jeff Lewis. His company is called Lewis Creek Harps, and this is his therapy harp. It's called the Nightingale, Jessie Nightingale. Just this past October, I bought a new Larry Fisher harp. I had heard a lot about these harps, and I'd heard he had retired, and he sort of came back out of retirement, and he had a long waiting list. But suddenly during COVID, he put up some harps, and of course I bought one, and the others went very quickly. But it is the perfect harp, I think, for Irish Celtic music. It's just a lovely harp. It's very different from the dusty string. It has a brighter, lighter sound, and the strings are fluorocarbon, and they seem to be much easier to play quickly. And so, yeah, I'm very excited. I'm taking lessons from a great Irish teacher who lives in Ireland, and Grania Hamley, and she is the one who recommended this. I had heard a lot about them, but I'm very happy with it. It's just a beautiful harp.
Well, we have one more track to feature from your CDD piece. I wonder if you could introduce Shining Stars.
This piece, a lot of these pieces on here also were inspired by essential oils. So it reminded me of jasmine, this piece. And it's then I read this prayer and named it Shining Stars. And it's dedicated to Christina Turin, who is the founder and director of the International Harp Therapy Program, which is where I got my second certification. And it just fits with Christina's personality.
Wow, what a beautiful way to wrap up this episode of the podcast that is Shining Stars, Laurence Furr. Absolutely lovely. That is just so, so nice. Laurence, I want to thank you for being here. We'll include links to your website, your YouTube, and Facebook in the show notes so that people can find you and find out more about you. Your music is also on Apple Music, Spotify, Pandora, etc. And all that there's links in your website to all those places too, but we'll include that. Thank you so much for being here, and thank you so much for the good work you do with the therapeutic harp music. It sounds just like you're really out there helping people.
Thank you. It is my passion. This work is my passion, and I really appreciate your asking me to be on your program.
My pleasure. Thank you for being here. So if you have questions or guest suggestions, please email me at openingtheharpchakra@yahoo.com. In the weeks to come, we're going to have more beautiful harp music from all over the world. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Jay Michaels. Peace. Namaste.